Hi. So, welcome to week one and the science of kind, brave leadership. So, this is getting into why this all matters. Um, so, I'm Helen, and I'm so glad you're here. So, this week marks the beginning of this journey where we'll explore how kindness and bravery aren't just nice to haves, but real important qualities for creating workplaces where people thrive. So, how about we start with this thought? Leadership isn't just about strategy and results, it's also about kindness, bravery, and creating spaces where people thrive. Now, when we think about leadership, it's easy to focus on outcomes, hitting targets, driving performance, meeting KPIs. But true leadership is more than that. It's about people. It's about creating environments where individuals and teams feel supported, valued, and empowered to do their best work. So, kindness and bravery are the foundation of that kind of leadership. They help us build trust, foster creativity, and navigate through situations with integrity. And the best part, science backs this up. That's exactly what we're going to look at today. So, in today's session, and we'll dig deeper into this in the practical live session as well, we'll start by exploring what kindness really means in a leadership context. Is it just about being nice, or is there more of it? No, there's definitely more to it. The science behind kindness. So we'll look at the research, the neuroscience and psychology that shows why kindness isn't just a feel-good trait, but powerful leadership tool. We'll talk about how kindness affects the brain, team dynamics, and even business outcomes. So we'll also debunk a few myths. We'll tackle some common myths. Have you ever heard someone say kindness is a weakness in leadership? Or, oh, that's a bit too soft for me. Or as one person said to me, that's a hellscape. Um, yeah. Or that kind leaders can't make tough decisions. Well, we're about to bust them absolutely wide open. And there will be some reflection and practical exercises, and these will help you apply what you've learnt here in the written materials, in the live, and start leading with more kindness and bravery right away. So, throughout this, I encourage you to reflect on your own leadership style, think about how kindness shows up in your leadership today, and where there might be room to grow. Now, you may be leading a large team, managing projects, or influencing without authority. And kindness and bravery can help you become a stronger, more impactful leader with all of that. And remember, this is a judgment free space. It's about learning, growing, and becoming the kind leader who makes positive impacts. So let's get started. We're going to kick things off by thinking about what kindness is in leadership. So grab your workbook, a notebook, and let's dive in. Now, kindness in leadership is all about empathy, so that put yourself in someone else's shoes, feeling what they feel. It's about being authentic because that will build trust. Um, Actually turning up and being honest about your boundaries. And it's definitely about courage. So hence the kind, brave leader. So we'll talk a bit more about courage, but it's not the absence of fear, it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. It's also about integrity. It's about knowing your values, knowing your strengths, and living with them, and understanding that sometimes they may rub up against your organization and you may need to use your courage and your authenticity to help your integrity stay part of it. Now, there are lots of different ways that kindness will show up. A big one is active listening. So that is the act of holding space for someone, listening fully. Turn off your screens, any extra screens if you're doing it online, put your phone away, give someone your full attention. Now, how often do you really do that? Actually sit there and hold space and listen. Now, this is a real coaching skill. Um, it's about acknowledging what people have said, but not assuming. So you actually are listening to what they're said. It's about offering constructive feedback, but with empathy. That's another one of those faces of kindness, and active listening helps do that. And we will talk more about active listening when we get into the difficult conversation piece, and also more about feedback. It's also about recognizing and celebrating achievements, no matter how big or small, but also doing it in a way that the person understands and receives well. It's about advocating for team well-being. So if your team is overworked, how can you advocate for better work-life balance? Sometimes it's saying no, sometimes it's putting in boundaries. Boundaries are one of the kindest things you can do. But it is about being brave enough to push back when you can see your team starting to burn out, starting to fall apart. So what I'd like you to do here is list 3 acts of kindness you've observed or practiced in your leadership. So you can pause the video and do that and have a think about it. Now, welcome back if you paused the video. The science of kindness. So kindness has started to be more researched in the last 10, 15 years. And some of the things that have become evident are that acts of kindness release oxytocin. So if I perform an act of kindness, now that might be letting a car out of a junction, it might be helping someone with a buggy onto the train, it might be any of these acts of kindness, whether it's big or small, I'm going to feel more bonded. I might feel that the place I'm in is more deserving of my trust. So it starts to foster social bonding. But what's really interesting, and it applies to several of these hormones that come out, is even if you witness the kindness, you will experience that release of oxytocin. So I perform an act of kindness. The person who receives the act of kindness feels better as well. So they get a release of oxytocin, but so does someone who's witnessed it. And do you know what that means? You are much, much more likely to go on and perform an act of kindness yourself, whether you've witnessed it, received it, or performed it. All 3 parts of that interaction will go off and do more kindness. Now imagine this in a workplace. You do something kind, your colleague receives it. Yay. Later that day, they do something kind. Colleague receives it, they do something kind. But also, all the people that witnessed it, now, in a workplace, that could be 3 or 4 people. They will also go off and do something kind. This is going to ripple out really quickly. But also, kindness reduces cortisol, which helps us lower our stress levels. So as well as releasing that oxytocin, it's scientifically proven to reduce your cortisol. And it also dilates your blood vessels, so you can reduce blood pressure as well. Now, kindness also triggers dopamine. So you get that helper's high. So that encourages you as well. So it's good. That is all part of that bonding. You've got the oxytocin and the dopamine are both going to make it much more likely you go out and do things. It also releases serotonin, which boosts well-being. So why does it all matter? Well, we've talked about how this will improve the team, but it also builds those bonds, which then build trust, which make things psychologically safe, much more innovation, much more creativity. People are just happier and they are working harder and better. Now, how about those myths that we talked about? Now, you're here, so hopefully you understand that kindness requires some bravery, but also being a truly kind, brave leader will mean that you are responsible. So you will keep yourself accountable, keep colleagues accountable, but also advocate upwards, advocate outwards. And that takes a lot of bravery. And sometimes it will take a deep breath, but it also takes a group. Now, we're creating a group of leaders here who will, I hope, go on to support each other going forward. It also enhances productivity because you're going to be more trustful. As we mentioned just now, it improves your creativity, your innovation, and all of that will then mean better outputs. So whilst kind leaders aren't measuring the outputs, they are seeing them anyway. They're not all about the outputs, but the outputs will be better. So if anyone says to you it's a sign of weakness, or no, my team would never do this, just to try. So, okay. So as someone said to me recently, I love the idea of a check-in at the start of a meeting, but my team would never check in on saying thank you to each other. And I'm like, would they not start to do it? And it can be hard. There are teams out there that are so difficult that possibly the answer is not to carry on managing them. But on the whole, little moves towards this, conversations around kindness, will all help. So modeling the kindness, doing the kindness, trying it out, will all start rippling it out. So where do they come together? Well, bravery is very much about taking action despite the fear. It's all about being guided by your values and your integrity. And we will talk more about this. So they come together because you will be having difficult conversations with compassion. You might have to take difficult decisions. So sometimes these difficult conversations are about the greater good. So the person in front of you, it might be tough to have that conversation with, but the rest of the team will appreciate it. For example, just as kindness ripples out, unfortunately, unkindness does. But if you can nip it in the bud, if you've started to notice something not going quite so well, maybe someone is routinely not coming to a particular meeting, maybe there's a bit of beef between people. If you can nip these things in the bud, then you will start to find a way of the people around you will know you've been brave and you've actually tackled the tough thing, but also you've stopped it becoming a bigger issue, because as organizations, we're only as good as the worst behavior that we tolerate. And if we let something go, then that circle of acceptance has got bigger, and then we let something else go, and then it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and where does it stop? So you need to nip those little things that are difficult. Bad behavior might not be quite, but unkind behaviors, start nipping those things in the bud, and actually stuff will get better. I managed someone who never said hello at the start of their emails. They literally just launched in, so it felt like an order, whatever it was, felt like they were just bossing me around. They never finished it with a best wishes or kind regards or a thank you or anything as well. They just put their name. So it felt very, very aggressive. Now, I literally had to sit them down and I had to say to them, so we were already having conversations about like their interaction with people. And I said, could they try saying hello at the start of their emails, or dear such and such, depending on who they were talking about? And could they sign them off with some sort of pleasantry? And they were like, yeah, but why? And I said, give it a go. About 2 weeks later, they were like, well, I've done what you've said and people are being nicer to me. And it is nicer, isn't it, when they reply to the emails quicker and stuff? I was like, yes. So sometimes the tough conversations, and that wasn't obviously the toughest I've had to have, but sometimes those slightly difficult conversations actually can produce results quite quickly. And what happened was everybody else was already saying hello and thank you, but they didn't slip. They didn't start all sending each other aggressive messages, but it turns out they hadn't been as kind to the person who was sending the aggressive messages as they could have been. So I really, really advocate for tackling things at point of need. So you've probably heard of the kindness ripple effect, because as we mentioned, one thing happens, get a buzz, you get your oxytocin, oh, you're going to do it again. And the people witnessing it are doing it again. And this just really, really helps build resilience, build bonding, improves morale. Now, this is going to might sound slightly silly, but one really good example of this was someone who, and I read about this on Reddit, so I can see if I can find the post and put it in. But one person bought a bag of multicolored ducks. And what they did was, after everyone had left one night, they put them around the office. Now, this team was dysfunctional. They weren't getting on. They put them all over the place. So people were finding them in filing cabinets and cupboards and inside mugs. They were finding them on desks and so on. And people started talking to each other about the ducks. And then they were like, someone started collecting the ducks of a particular colour, and there were scenes being devised, and this conversation then rippled and rippled, and through this sort of obvious ripple of the ducks moving around and everything, the conversation started moving on. So they talk about the duck, but then they might talk about work or home, or someone might say the duck reminds them of something. And it unlocked that team's trust, their morale, their resilience, and that small act of, I would say, kindness by cheering people up really worked. So if you are struggling, why don't you go out and get a bag of ducks? And I did have someone send me a picture of a duck they had found, because someone had obviously either read the same Reddit post or heard me talk about it and had started doing it. So little things can really have a big effect. Now, how does kindness currently shape your workplace? I'd like you to take a little pause to have a little think about that, note down any feelings that come up and thoughts that come up. So here are some journal prompts. Now, when we're in the live, we will share in pairs, but if you're not in the live, feel free to share this in the community. But how do I currently incorporate kindness into my leadership style? When was the last time I led bravely and kindly in a challenging situation? What is one act of kind leadership I can commit to this week? Okay, think about them. And then in pairs or in the group, we will discuss one leadership challenge where kindness made a difference. And I'd love to also hear what your commitments are so we can hold each other accountable. So these are the key takeaways for you from this week. Kindness in leadership is a strength, not a weakness. Science supports that kindness improves well-being, trust, and performance. And brave kindness balances empathy and accountability. Small acts can have a big impact on team dynamics and culture. So I will leave this with you. You're obviously able to revisit it. Lots more information in the materials and some exercises. There's also a quiz at the end. And I will see how this week takes us. And then next week, we're talking about self-kindness, because before we can go into any other type of kindness, we need to be kind to ourselves. So thanks so much for all of your time. See you soon.